The year was 1845. Virginia, with its verdant valleys and dense forests, harbored secrets as deep as its rushing rivers. That spring, an unusual cold still clung to the air, and the morning mist crept like a shroud over the Blue Ridge Mountains. Amidst this melancholic scenery, the small village of Oakhaven lived under a shadow that nature could not explain, the mystery of St. Cecilia's Convent. It was an isolated place, built of dark stone on top of a steep hill, its narrow windows like empty eyes watching the world below. For decades, the convent had been a peaceful refuge for the nuns, a place of prayer and quiet work. But 5 years ago, something drastic had happened. 52 sisters, from the Mother Superior to the youngest novice, vanished without a trace. No letters, no clues, just the echoing emptiness of the cells and the sepulchral silence of its corridors. Local authorities, after superficial investigations filled with unfounded speculation, had filed away the case, attributing the disappearance to an unexplained mass migration, a theory that satisfied bureaucracy but tormented Oakhaven's soul. However, the mystery was not completely dormant. It simmered in the mind of Samuel Blackwood, a private detective from Richmond, whose reputation was built on cases others deemed unsolvable. Samuel was a man of few words and keen insight, his face marked by years of confronting the darkness of the human soul. His life was an incessant search for the truth, often thankless and dangerous. On that gloomy April morning, as the damp smell of earth mingled with that of burning wood, Samuel received a letter that would change the course of his life. The paper was thin, crumpled, and the handwriting, though elegant, trembled with urgency. There was no sender, just a seal with a dove-shaped monogram, peculiarly similar to the crest of the defunct St. Cecilia's Convent. The message was short and enigmatic. "Mr. Blackwood, my name is Sister Agnes. I was one of the few who escaped. The truth is in the convent. They took them. Help me before it's too late. Oakhaven. Next Tuesday at sunset, at the old abandoned chapel on the outskirts of town. Trust no one." Samuel felt a shiver run down his spine. Sister Agnes. The name resonated in his mind, for she was one of the few nuns who, according to official records, was not present at the convent on the day of the disappearance. The note was a flame in the swamp of stagnation, a glimmer of hope that clung to his sharp intuition. He read the letter repeatedly, trying to decipher each line, each word, in search of a hidden detail. The phrase, "they took them," hit him hard. Who were they? And why was she seeking him out now, after so long? He pondered the risks. Oakhaven was a small place, known for its conservatism and a certain distrust of strangers. The local police, led by Sheriff Brody, a man with a reputation for being more concerned with established order than with justice, would likely not look kindly on his interference. But Sister Agnes's call was irresistible. The promise of a hidden truth was a magnet for his investigative nature. Samuel spent the rest of the day researching old newspaper clippings about the convent case. News was scarce and contradictory. Some reports spoke of a mysterious illness, others of a religious exodus. None of these explanations seemed plausible for the disappearance of so many people at once, without a trace. The lack of in-depth investigation, the haste to close the case, all raised red flags for the detective. He imagined the convent, the cold stone, the silence that mingled with the wind, perhaps the whispers of a past that refused to be forgotten. What could have happened to 52 women? It wasn't an event that would simply vanish from collective memory. Someone in Oakhaven must know more. And Sister Agnes seemed to be the key. The next day, Samuel packed a small bag. He armed himself with his pocket revolver, a notepad, and the determination of a man who knew he was about to step onto dangerous ground. The train to Oakhaven would depart the next morning. He knew the journey would be long and full of uncertainties. Sister Agnes's letter was a thread, but the fabric he needed to unravel was vast and dark. He had a strong feeling that this would not just be another case, but a descent into a web of secrets that could shake the foundations of an entire community. St. Cecilia's convent was calling, and Samuel Blackwood was on his way, prepared to confront any truth, no matter how terrible. If you enjoyed this first chapter and want to know what happens next, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming episodes of this mystery and suspense story. Remember, this is a fictional story. The train ride to Oakhaven was long and punctuated by the rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks, a monotonous lullaby that did little to calm Samuel's racing thoughts. The Virginia landscape outside the window transformed from sprawling farmlands to denser forests, hinting at the increasing isolation of his destination. He arrived in Oakhaven late in the afternoon, the sky a bruised purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the bustling city he had left behind. Oakhaven was a picture of a bygone era. A single dirt road, muddy from recent rains, served as its main thoroughfare, lined with weathered wooden buildings that housed a general store, a blacksmith, and a small, unassuming church. Few people were out at that hour. Those he did see cast curious, wary glances his way, their faces etched with the quiet suspicion common in small, insular communities. News traveled fast, even here, and a stranger arriving on the evening train was an event. Samuel made his way to the only boarding house in town, a quaint but slightly dilapidated two-story building called the Traveller's Rest. Mrs. Gable, the proprietress, was a stern-faced woman with tightly pulled-back gray hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She greeted him with a curt nod and a look that clearly communicated her distrust of outsiders. "Traveling through, are we?" she inquired, her voice dry as parchment. "Business in town," Samuel replied, offering a polite but firm smile. He didn't elaborate. Small towns thrived on gossip, and he needed to keep his intentions as private as possible. Mrs. Gable merely grunted, handing him a key to a small, sparsely furnished room on the second floor. The room was clean but cold, a single window offering a view of the darkening street. After dropping his bag, Samuel decided to take a brief walk to get his bearings. He needed to locate the abandoned chapel. As he walked, the silence of Oakhaven was palpable, almost oppressive. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a rural setting, but a silence that felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken stories. The few lights that flickered from windows seemed to dim as he passed, as if the town itself held its breath. He passed by the general store, its windows dark and uninviting, and the church, its steeple a stark silhouette against the twilight sky. The air grew colder, and a shiver that had nothing to do with the temperature ran down his spine. He eventually found the chapel on the outskirts of town, just as Sister Agnes's note had indicated. It was a crumbling structure, its wooden cross tilted precariously, its stained glass windows long shattered or boarded up. Weeds choked the path leading to its heavy, splintered doors. The chapel stood on the edge of a dense thicket of trees, beyond which, Samuel knew, lay the road to the convent. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, isolated and offering ample cover. Returning to the boarding house, Samuel felt the weight of the town's hidden fears. The disappearance of the nuns was more than just an unsolved case here. It was a scar on the community, a wound that festered beneath the surface. He saw it in the wary eyes of the locals, heard it in the hushed tones when the convent was mentioned, or rather, not mentioned. It was a topic that everyone avoided, as if speaking of it might awaken something terrible. He ate a solitary dinner of stew and coarse bread, Mrs. Gable serving him with the same distant politeness. He noticed a few men at another table, their voices low as they discussed crops and weather, but their eyes occasionally darted his way. He understood. He was the outsider, the disruption to their carefully maintained peace. Back in his room, Samuel meticulously cleaned his revolver. The familiar weight of the cold steel, a small comfort. He studied a rudimentary map of Oakhaven he'd purchased from the general store, noting the location of the convent, the chapel, and the main roads. The convent stood several miles outside the village, accessible only by a narrow, winding dirt path that branched off the main road. Its isolation was a key factor in its eerie reputation. As night deepened, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes of his room. The sounds of the village faded into an almost absolute quiet, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Samuel lay awake, his mind racing. Who was Sister Agnes, really? If she had escaped, why had she waited 5 years to contact someone, and why him? The most unsettling thought was the warning. Trust no one. This implied that the danger was not just from some unknown they, but possibly from within Oakhaven itself. He felt a prickle of unease. He was walking into a hornet's nest, and the sting could be lethal. The silence of Oakhaven was not empty. It was filled with unseen shadows and unspoken threats. He knew that the next day, his rendezvous with Sister Agnes would be the true beginning of his descent into the chilling mystery of the silent convent. He had to be alert, every sense tuned, for the town, he realized, was holding its breath, waiting. The air on Tuesday was thick with an unseasonal chill, a biting wind whipping through the skeletal branches of the trees. Samuel spent the day making discreet inquiries, but his efforts were met with a wall of polite but firm evasiveness. The mention of the convent brought an immediate shift in demeanor. Eyes would drop, conversations would cease, and a nervous tension would fill the air. Sheriff Brody, a burly man with a perpetually furrowed brow, made it clear that he considered the convent case closed and any further investigation unnecessary. "Some things are best left undisturbed, Mr. Blackwood," he'd grumbled, his tone leaving no room for argument. Samuel sensed an underlying defensiveness, a hidden discomfort that went beyond mere bureaucratic apathy. As the sun began its descent, painting the western sky in hues of orange and bruised purple, Samuel made his way to the abandoned chapel. The path was overgrown, the silence deepening with each step he took away from the sparse lights of Oakhaven. The chapel itself loomed like a skeletal sentinel against the fading light, its broken windows resembling vacant eyes staring into the deepening gloom. A shiver, not entirely due to the cold, traced its way down his spine. He pushed open the heavy, creaking wooden doors. Inside, the air was stagnant, thick with the scent of dust, decaying wood, and something else. A faint metallic tang that he couldn't quite place. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the boarded-up windows, casting long, distorted shadows that danced unsettlingly with the flickering flame of his small lantern. Cobwebs draped like macabre curtains, and the remains of pews lay scattered and broken. It was a place where despair had settled, a stark monument to forgotten prayers. "Sister Agnes?" Samuel called out, his voice echoing eerily in the cavernous space. Only the whisper of the wind answered him, rattling a loose pane of glass. He waited, his senses heightened, every shadow a potential threat, every creak a possible approach. The warning, "Trust no one," resonated in his mind, making him question every rustle, every faint sound from the surrounding woods. Minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. Just as doubt began to creep in, a faint sound reached his ears, a soft scuffle from behind the altar. Samuel's hand instinctively went to his revolver. He moved cautiously, his footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust. Peering around the crumbling stone, he saw her. She was huddled in the corner, barely visible in the dim light, a small, frail figure wrapped in a dark, tattered cloak. Her face was gaunt, framed by wisps of graying hair, and her eyes, though wide with fear, held a desperate intensity. She was older than he expected, perhaps in her late 50s, her body trembling uncontrollably. She certainly didn't look like someone who had escaped a great danger 5 years ago. She looked like someone who had been living in hiding, haunted by it. "Sister Agnes?" Samuel repeated, his voice softer this time, seeking to reassure her. She flinched, pressing herself further into the corner like a cornered animal. "Are you alone?" she whispered, her voice raspy, barely audible. "Yes, sister," Samuel affirmed, slowly raising his hands to show they were empty. "My name is Samuel Blackwood. You sent for me." Her eyes, dark and haunted, scrutinized him for a long moment, searching for any hint of deceit. Finally, with a visible effort, she seemed to decide he was trustworthy. She crawled out from her hiding place, her movement slow and pained, and sat on a broken pew, clutching her cloak tightly around her. "They are watching," she began, her voice a little stronger now, though still a strained whisper. "Always watching, even here." She cast a nervous glance towards the chapel doors, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "Who are they, sister?" Samuel pressed gently, pulling out his notepad and a pencil. She hesitated, her gaze fixed on something unseen beyond the chapel walls. "The Brotherhood of the Silent Vow," she finally said, her voice dropping to a barely audible whisper, as if merely speaking the words was a grave transgression. "They are everywhere. In Oakhaven. They control everything." Samuel frowned. The Brotherhood of the Silent Vow? He had never heard of such an organization, especially one operating with such apparent impunity in a supposedly quiet Virginian town. "What is this Brotherhood, sister, and what did they do to the nuns?" Tears welled in her eyes, tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. "They came in the night, 5 years ago, like shadows. We were sleeping. They were not men of God. They wore dark robes and their faces were hidden. They rounded us up, all of us. 52 sisters. I was ill that night in the infirmary, hidden behind a curtain. I heard everything, the whispers, the cries. Then silence. They took them, all of them, into the mountains." "Into the mountains?" Samuel repeated, his mind racing. The Blue Ridge Mountains were vast and unforgiving. Hiding 52 women there would be an enormous undertaking. Why? Why did they take them? Sister Agnes shook her head, tears streaming freely now. "I don't know the exact reason, but I heard fragments, whispers of a great work, a sacred purpose, and something about the land, the convent's land. They were interested in something here beneath the convent, something ancient." Samuel's pen scratched furiously across the paper. A brotherhood, a sacred purpose, and ancient land. This was far more complex than a simple disappearance. "And why did you wait so long to come forward, sister? Why me?" "Fear," she choked out, wiping her eyes with a trembling hand. "They would have found me. They are everywhere. I fled Oakhaven that night, hid in the wilderness. I've been living in the shadows, moving from place to place, waiting for a sign. A sign that I could trust someone. I heard about your reputation, Mr. Blackwood. You uncover the truth, and now I can't wait any longer. I saw one of them. In Oakhaven. He recognized me. They know I'm back. They are coming for me." Her voice was filled with raw terror. "Who did you see, sister?" Samuel asked, his voice urgent. Before she could answer, a sudden sharp crack echoed from the woods nearby, like a dry branch snapping underfoot. Sister Agnes gasped, her eyes wide with renewed terror. She scrambled to her feet, her frail body trembling. "They're here," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "They found me." Samuel spun around, his hand already on his revolver. He scanned the darkness beyond the chapel doors, but saw nothing, only the swaying shadows of the trees in the wind. The metallic scent he'd noticed earlier seemed stronger now. "Get down, sister," he commanded, pulling her behind the altar. Another sound, closer this time, a faint rustle of leaves, then the distinct click of a rifle being cocked. Someone was out there, closing in. The Brotherhood was real, and they were deadly. Samuel knew he had walked into a trap, but Sister Agnes was clearly in grave danger. He gripped his revolver, his heart pounding, realizing that the silence of Oakhaven was not just eerie, but lethal. The click of the rifle bolt sent a jolt of ice through Samuel's veins. He pushed Sister Agnes deeper behind the altar, her small body trembling uncontrollably against the cold stone. The faint metallic tang he'd noticed earlier now seemed to be tinged with the scent of fear, both hers and his own. The wind howled outside, a mournful dirge that seemed to carry the footsteps of unseen pursuers. "Stay low, sister," Samuel whispered, his voice tight. He peered cautiously around the edge of the altar, his eyes straining to pierce the deepening gloom outside the chapel doors. The moonlight, once a guide, now only served to create deceptive shadows. A figure emerged from the tree line, a dark silhouette against the last dying embers of the sunset. Another followed, and then another. They wore long, dark cloaks, their faces obscured by deep hoods. They moved with a practiced, unsettling silence, not the clumsy stealth of amateurs, but the controlled movements of hunters. There were at least 3 of them, possibly more, closing in on the chapel from different angles. Samuel's mind raced. He was outgunned and outnumbered. His revolver was a reliable weapon, but against multiple armed assailants in the dark, his chances were slim. His priority was Sister Agnes. If they had tracked her here, they clearly wanted to silence her. "They're coming for me," Sister Agnes whimpered, her voice cracking with terror. "They can't let me speak." "We need to move," Samuel decided quickly. The chapel offered little cover once they were inside. He looked towards the back of the chapel, where a small, dilapidated door led to what looked like a disused sacristy. It was a long shot, but it was their only option. "There's a way out through the back," he hissed, grabbing Sister Agnes's arm. "Can you run?" She nodded weakly, her breath ragged. Just then, one of the hooded figures burst through the main chapel doors, the splintered wood groaning in protest. He was tall and broad-shouldered, carrying a long rifle. The others fanned out, their shadows stretching menacingly across the chapel floor. "Sister Agnes," a deep guttural voice boomed, devoid of any discernible emotion. "Come out, and no harm will come to the man." Samuel knew it was a lie. He pulled Sister Agnes swiftly towards the sacristy door. The hinges shrieked as he yanked it open, revealing a cramped, dust-filled room. Beyond it, a narrow, overgrown path led into the dense woods. "Go," he urged her, pushing her through. "Follow the path, hide in the trees, don't look back." Sister Agnes stumbled out, her frail form disappearing into the darkness. Samuel hesitated for a split second, then turned to face their pursuers. He knew he had to buy her time. The first cloaked figure was already halfway down the aisle, his rifle raised. Samuel fired, the gunshot echoing deafeningly in the enclosed space. The figure staggered, a grunt escaping him, but he didn't fall. The heavy cloak absorbed most of the impact, or perhaps the shot was not true in the chaotic darkness. Another shot rang out, this time from one of the other assailants, splintering the wood near Samuel's head. He ducked behind the altar, reloading his revolver with practiced speed. The air was now thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder. "He's armed!" one of the voices snarled. Samuel knew he couldn't hold them off for long. He needed a distraction. He spotted a stack of old, decaying wooden crates near the chapel's side wall. With a desperate heave, he pushed them over, sending them crashing to the floor with a deafening clatter. The sound momentarily disoriented the attackers, drawing their attention. In that brief moment of chaos, Samuel bolted towards the sacristy door. He heard shouts of frustration behind him. He burst through the door, his lungs burning, and plunged into the inky blackness of the woods. The path was treacherous. Roots and rocks, hidden beneath a carpet of fallen leaves. He could hear the heavy footsteps of his pursuers close behind, the snapping of twigs, and the occasional frustrated curse. They knew these woods better than he did. "Sister Agnes," he called out softly, hoping to get a bearing, but received no answer. She was either too terrified to respond or too far ahead. He could only hope she had made it to safety. He ran deeper into the woods, the sharp branches whipping at his face, the thorns tearing at his clothes. The metallic smell, once faint, now seemed to cling to the very air, a strange, almost coppery scent that he couldn't shake. He tried to think, to plan. If he could lead them away from Sister Agnes, that would be a victory. Suddenly, his foot caught on something unseen. He pitched forward, hitting the ground hard, his head connecting with a rough tree root. A blinding flash of pain erupted behind his eyes and the world spun. He tasted blood. Before he could fully recover, a heavy boot connected with his ribs, knocking the wind out of him. He groaned, struggling to breathe. Dark cloaked figures loomed over him, their faces still hidden by the deep hoods. One of them knelt, a gleam of cold steel appearing in his hand, a knife. "We knew she would seek help, outsider," the guttural voice from earlier rumbled, devoid of any triumph, only a cold certainty. "We simply waited, and now you will tell us where she is, or you will join the others in the silent earth." Samuel's vision blurred, the pain in his head intensifying. He looked up at the obscured faces of his attackers, a chilling realization dawning on him. These were not common thugs. Their movements were precise, their silence unsettling, their determination absolute. They were highly organized, perhaps even fanatical, and they were willing to kill. He had underestimated the Brotherhood of the Silent Vow. The mystery of the convent was far more dangerous and deeply entrenched than he had ever imagined. As consciousness began to slip away, his last coherent thought was of Sister Agnes. Had she truly escaped? Or was he the only one left to face the silent terror of Oakhaven? If the mystery deepens and you're desperate to know what happens next, subscribe to the channel for more thrilling chapters. Remember, this is a fictional story. Samuel Blackwood awoke to a throbbing pain in his head and a metallic taste in his mouth. He was lying on the cold, damp earth, the air still permeated with the scent of pine and something subtly metallic. Above him the stars glittered with indifferent brilliance through the breaks in the tree canopy. He felt disoriented, his body aching, but surprisingly he was alone. The cloaked figures were gone. He slowly pushed himself up, every muscle protesting. His head spun, and he touched a sticky warmth at his temple. Blood. They had hit him, but not fatally. Why? They had him at their mercy. This was puzzling. Were they so confident that Sister Agnes wouldn't talk, or that she couldn't be found? Or perhaps they wanted him to think she was safe, to lull him into a false sense of security while they hunted her. He fumbled for his revolver. It was gone. His notepad and pencil were also missing. They had stripped him of anything that could aid his investigation, a clear message. He was not to meddle, but such tactics only strengthened his resolve. They had left him alive, a mistake they would regret. He managed to stagger through the dense undergrowth, relying on the faint starlight to guide him. His ribs ached with every breath, and a deep bruise was already forming on his side. He tried to retrace his steps, but the darkness and his addled state made it impossible to find the chapel. Instead, he found himself wandering deeper into the unfamiliar woods. After what felt like hours, he stumbled upon a narrow, barely discernible path. He followed it, his legs burning, until he saw a faint light flickering through the trees. Hope surged through him. It was a small, dilapidated cabin, its chimney emitting a thin wisp of smoke. He approached cautiously, remembering Sister Agnes's warning. Trust no one, but his injuries demanded aid, and his instincts told him this light was not from his assailants. He knocked gently on the weathered wooden door. The door creaked open, revealing a frail, elderly woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes sharp and surprisingly lucid. She held a flickering candle, its flame dancing in the slight draught. "Mercy, child," she rasped, her voice surprisingly strong despite her age. "What happened to you?" Samuel, weakened, explained briefly that he had been attacked. He withheld the details about the convent and Sister Agnes, maintaining a cautious reserve. The old woman, whose name was Ilara, ushered him inside without further questions, her movements slow but purposeful. The cabin was small but warm, filled with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. A crackling fire burned in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Ilara, it turned out, was a healer, living on the fringes of Oakhaven, a solitary figure often sought out by those who distrusted the town's official doctor. She cleaned his head wound with surprising gentleness, applying a poultice of pungent herbs. "You're lucky, young man," she murmured, her skilled fingers probing his ribs. "Looks like a few cracked ribs, but nothing broken. You'll mend." As she worked, Samuel observed her. She didn't press for details, but her eyes held a knowing look, as if she had seen such things before. "You're not from Oakhaven," she stated, more of an observation than a question. "No," Samuel admitted. "From Richmond." She nodded slowly. "Many come to Oakhaven seeking answers. Few find them, and some never leave." Her gaze drifted towards the window, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "There are shadows in this valley deeper than the night." Samuel seized the opportunity. "I'm looking into the convent, the missing nuns." Ilara's hands stilled. She looked at him directly, her eyes piercing. "A dangerous path you walk, Mr. Blackwood. The convent holds a silence that few dare to break." She paused, then lowered her voice. "The sisters, they did not simply vanish. There are whispers of a group, powerful and secretive, that has roots deep in this town. They call themselves the Guardians of the Earth." "The Guardians of the Earth?" Samuel repeated, his brow furrowing. Sister Agnes had called them the Brotherhood of the Silent Vow. Were these the same group? A different name? Or perhaps a different faction? This implied a broader, more organized network than he initially thought. "They believe this land, particularly the land where the convent stands, holds a unique power," Ilara explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "An ancient energy, they say. They guard it fiercely. Any who threaten it or seek to exploit it are dealt with." "And the nuns?" Samuel pressed. "Were they a threat?" Ilara sighed, a deep, weary sound. "The convent was built on hallowed ground the Guardians claimed as their own, long before any church stood there. The nuns, they were in the way. They began to notice things, question things. Perhaps they stumbled upon something the Guardians were doing, something hidden beneath the convent. They needed the convent's land, but also its secrecy. Removing the sisters eliminated both problems. This corroborated Sister Agnes's fragmented account of ancient land and a great work. Samuel felt a surge of adrenaline despite his pain. He was getting closer to the truth, a truth far darker than he had imagined. "Did you ever see them? These Guardians?" Ilara shook her head. "No, they work in the shadows, but I've seen their work. Unexplained accidents, people who vanish, and the fear in the eyes of those who remain." She glanced at him. "You're lucky they didn't kill you. They usually don't leave witnesses." "They wanted to know where Sister Agnes was," Samuel said. "They thought I had her." Ilara's eyes widened. "Sister Agnes? She lives? The one who escaped?" Her face showed a mixture of awe and profound fear. "You must find her, Mr. Blackwood. If she is truly back, She is in grave danger. They will hunt her relentlessly. And if they find her, they will not make the same mistake twice. Samuel felt a renewed sense of urgency. Sister Agnes was still out there, vulnerable. He needed to find her before the Brotherhood, or the Guardians, or whatever they called themselves did. Ilara had given him a crucial piece of the puzzle, a different name for the secretive group, hinting at their motives. The pieces were starting to connect. The convent, the land, a powerful, ruthless organization, and 52 vanished women. The darkness surrounding Oakhaven was not just the absence of light, but a carefully constructed veil of secrecy. And Samuel was determined to rip it apart, even if it meant risking his own life. The stakes had been raised significantly, and he knew he was now deep inside the lion's den. Samuel spent the next 2 days recovering at Ilara's cabin, his wounds slowly mending under her care and the restorative power of rest. She provided him with simple, nourishing meals and a quiet space to think. He learned that Ilara, though respected for her healing abilities, was also viewed with a degree of suspicion by the townsfolk due to her reclusive nature and her knowledge of the older ways. This detachment, Samuel realized, was likely what allowed her to possess information that others in Oakhaven dared not speak. He tried to piece together the fragmented information. Brotherhood of the Silent Vow and Guardians of the Earth. 2 names for the same shadowy organization, or perhaps 2 different groups with overlapping interests. Ilara had spoken of ancient energy and sacred land. Sister Agnes had mentioned a great work and something beneath the convent. The convergence of these details suggested a powerful, deeply rooted cult or secret society obsessed with the land the convent stood upon. During his recovery, Samuel tried to gather more clues, asking Ilara about local families, historical records, anything that might shed light on who these guardians might be. Ilara was guarded, but she revealed that certain old families in Oakhaven held significant power and influence, often controlling key businesses and civic positions. She spoke of the McCourty family, who owned the largest timber operation and a substantial portion of the surrounding land, and the Blackwells, who ran the general store and were deeply involved in the local church. These were names Samuel had heard mentioned in hushed tones during his brief stay in Oakhaven. "They have always been here," Ilara said one evening, stirring a concoction of herbs over the fire. "Their roots are deep, reaching back generations. They believe they are the rightful keepers of this valley's secrets. They don't tolerate interference." Samuel's thoughts kept returning to Sheriff Brody. His dismissive attitude towards the convent case, his quickness to close it, now seemed less like bureaucratic laziness and more like a deliberate act of obstruction. Could he be involved with the Guardians? It was a chilling thought. If the law itself was compromised, then Samuel was truly isolated. His main objective remained finding Sister Agnes. She was the only living witness, the key to unlocking the full truth. He realized that the Brotherhood likely hadn't killed him because they believed he could lead them to her. They knew he was a detective, and they would be watching him. This was a dangerous game, but it also offered an opportunity. He could use himself as bait. One morning, feeling stronger, Samuel decided to act. He thanked Ilara profusely for her help, promising to return. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. He needed to be visible to his pursuers. He made his way back towards Oakhaven, moving cautiously, constantly scanning his surroundings. He walked into the general store, a small bell jingling above the door. Mr. Blackwell, a portly man with beady eyes and a perpetual frown, greeted him with a grunt. Samuel bought some supplies, making sure to ask about the quickest route to the convent. Mr. Blackwell's expression tightened imperceptibly, and his voice became curt as he gave vague directions. The man was clearly unnerved by the mention of the convent, confirming Samuel's suspicions about the town's collective fear. Later, Samuel deliberately made himself visible, walking openly through the main street, passing by the blacksmith and the church. He observed the townsfolk, trying to discern who might be a part of the mysterious Brotherhood. He saw no cloaked figures, but he felt eyes on him, a constant, unsettling sense of being watched. The subtle shift in conversations as he approached, the quick glances, the way people averted their gaze when he met their eyes, it all confirmed his suspicion. The entire town was complicit, either through fear or direct involvement. His calculated visibility paid off. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows, Samuel noticed a black carriage with no discernible markings, distinct from the usual conveyances in Oakhaven, slowly following him from a distance. It was too far to identify anyone inside, but its presence was undeniable. They were tracking him. He decided to lead them away from the town, towards the very place they guarded so fiercely, the convent. He started walking purposefully towards the winding dirt path that led up the hill. He kept his pace steady, not too fast to suggest flight, not too slow to appear unconcerned. He needed them to believe he was actively searching, perhaps even foolishly, for Sister Agnes at the convent itself. As he walked, the metallic smell, which he had initially dismissed as a lingering scent from the ambush, seemed to grow stronger, almost imperceptibly the closer he got to the convent path. It was faint, a coppery mineral smell, and it bothered him. It was an unnatural scent for the wilderness, too distinct to be ignored. The path grew steeper and more overgrown, the air grew colder, and the silence became profound, broken only by the crunch of his boots on the loose gravel and the distant calls of nocturnal birds. He could feel the carriage behind him, a dark, silent shadow keeping pace. Finally, he reached the crest of the hill. The Convento de Santa Cecilia loomed before him, a grim, imposing silhouette against the pale, bruised sky. Its dark stone walls seemed to absorb the light, and its shattered windows stared out like empty eyes. The oppressive silence that emanated from it was almost tangible, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound. He stood at the overgrown gates, the wrought iron rusted and twisted, creaking faintly in the wind. The metallic smell was now undeniable, stronger than ever, originating from within the convent walls. It was iron, or perhaps something else, something deeply disturbing. He peered through the gates into the dark courtyard. He didn't see Sister Agnes. He saw no one. But he sensed their presence. The Brotherhood. They were here, waiting. He had walked into their trap, but this time he was ready. He had come armed not with a revolver, but with knowledge and a desperate gamble. He was about to confront the heart of Oakhaven's dark secret, knowing that the 52 vanished sisters were not just a mystery, but a warning. The true horror, he suspected, lay within those silent walls, and he was about to step into it, alone. The metallic, coppery scent, thick with decay, was overwhelming as Samuel pushed open the rusty gates of St. Cecilia's convent. The courtyard was overgrown, silent save for his pounding heart. He moved cautiously, scanning the dark windows of the imposing stone structure. The main entrance doors, ancient oak and slightly ajar, led into a grand, desolate foyer. Dust motes danced in the moonbeams, and the air here was colder, the metallic smell even stronger. This was its source. Samuel lit his lantern and moved through the convent's halls, his boots echoing. Empty common rooms, an overturned dining hall, a dust-draped chapel, all bore an unsettling sense of recent abandonment, not decades of decay. The inexplicable lack of struggle remained perplexing. He methodically checked each room. The nuns' cells were austere, their meager belongings still present, a rosary, a crucifix, tattered books. It was as if 52 women had simply vanished, leaving their lives behind with no trace of a struggle within these walls. The metallic smell intensified, guiding him to the convent's basement. He found a sturdy, iron-banded wooden door at the end of a long, dark corridor. A well-placed kick splintered the old lock, revealing stone steps descending into utter blackness. He descended carefully, lantern held high. The air grew damp and heavy, the metallic odor nauseatingly potent. Dripping water echoed. At the bottom, he found a vast, man-made underground chamber, not a typical cellar. His lantern beam revealed rough-hewn rock and thick wooden beams. In the center was a massive, circular pit, 20 feet in diameter, filled with a dark, viscous liquid that shimmered faintly. The overwhelming metallic smell emanated from it like old blood. Around the pit, in a precise circle, were 52 simple wooden cots. On each lay a neatly folded nun's habit. No bodies, no bones. Just their abandoned garments, as if they had disrobed and ceased to exist. Samuel's heart pounded. This was a place of sacrifice, something far more sinister. He knelt, examining a habit, clean, undisturbed. It felt like a macabre stage. He approached the pit, stomach churning, leaning in to discern the dark, thick liquid. Faint, imperceptible ripples disturbed its surface. "Well, Mr. Blackwood, you found it." A deep, resonant voice echoed from the chamber entrance. Samuel spun, his lantern beam sweeping across 3 cloaked figures standing at the steps. Their faces were obscured, but the leader, his voice smooth and cultured, held an ornate staff topped with a dark, light-absorbing stone. "We knew you would come here," the leader continued. "We allowed it. You have a reputation for persistence, and we needed to be sure you would follow the scent." "The scent?" Samuel demanded, his voice hoarse. "What is this place? What did you do to the sisters?" The leader stepped forward, his 2 companions fanning out, blocking the exit. "This, Mr. Blackwood, is the heart of our purpose. The ancient wellspring of energy that pulses beneath this sacred ground. The Sisters of Saint Cecilia, in their ignorance, built their convent directly upon it. They were an inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Samuel scoffed, anger flaring. 52 women. You murdered them." "No," the leader replied, chillingly calm. "We purified them, transformed them. They served a higher purpose, a ritual of communion with the earth's true power. Their spirits, their very essence, now fuel this wellspring. They are part of the great work Sister Agnes hinted at, the sacred purpose of the guardians of the earth. A necessary sacrifice for the awakening." A cold dread seeped into Samuel's bones. This was horrifying, delusional fanaticism. "And Sister Agnes, she knows this? She escaped?" "Sister Agnes," the leader said with a hint of amusement, "is an unfortunate loose end. She was weak, afraid. She saw only the fear, not the glory. But she will be found, and when she is, she will join her sisters." He gestured to the dark pit. "And you, Mr. Blackwood, have now seen too much. You will also join them. You will become part of the silent convent." The 2 cloaked figures moved forward. Samuel was trapped in mortal danger. He gripped his lantern, realizing the full, horrifying truth. The convent silence was the profound, eternal stillness of 52 lost souls absorbed into a monstrous, fanatical ritual. He had walked into the lair of fanatics, and escape seemed impossible. If you're on the edge of your seat and need to know what happens in this chilling mystery, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Remember, this is a fictional story. You will also join them. You will become part of the silent convent. The leader's chilling words echoed as 2 cloaked figures advanced. Samuel, still injured, knew he couldn't fight. His only chance was a diversion. He scanned the chamber for an advantage, noting a pile of tools and broken crates near a wall. "You're mad," Samuel spat, trying to buy time. "This is not sacred purpose. This is murder, mass murder." The leader chuckled. Ignorance often mistakes enlightenment for madness. As they closed in, Samuel hurled his lantern at the dark pit. Glass shattered, oil ignited, sending orange flames across the viscous liquid. Noxious, acrid smoke filled the chamber, stinging their eyes. The cloaked figures recoiled, coughing, momentarily disoriented. The leader, though momentarily shielded, barked, "Fools! Secure him!" Capitalizing on their confusion, Samuel bolted. He scrambled over cots, dodging a lunge, running towards a narrow crevice in the far rock wall, partially hidden by debris. It was a desperate gamble, but his only option. He squeezed through the tight opening, the rough stone scraping him, driven by terror. He emerged into a dark, claustrophobic tunnel, barely wide enough to crawl. The air was stale, the metallic smell fainter. He heard shouts and heavy breathing from the main chamber. They knew he was there. Samuel crawled forward, hands and knees tearing, refusing to return to the horrors of the wellspring. The depravity of the sisters' fate fueled his desperation. The tunnel sloped upward, and after an eternity, he saw a faint glimmer of light. He pushed harder, muscles screaming. He burst out into the cool night air, gasping. He was outside the convent walls, high on the hillside at the edge of dense trees. He saw a small, disguised wooden door, a secret exit. He didn't waste a second, stumbling into the trees, pushing through undergrowth, putting distance between himself and the convent. Distant shouts faded. He was lost in the vast wilderness, injured and unarmed. Then a flicker of light caught his eye. A small, carefully concealed fire nestled within a rocky outcrop. He hesitated, recalling Sister Agnes's warning, but the fire's concealment suggested someone in hiding. He approached cautiously, heart pounding. "Sister Agnes," he whispered. The figure by the fire started, then turned. It was her, dirt-streaked and exhausted, but with a spark of recognition and relief. "Mr. Blackwood, you got out," she exclaimed, her voice a fragile whisper. Samuel collapsed, trembling with exhaustion and relief. "Barely. They found the chapel. They know you came to me." He quickly recounted what he'd seen, the pit, the habits, the leader's chilling confession. Sister Agnes paled, gasping. "The wellspring. I knew it. My sisters. Oh, my poor sisters." Tears streamed. They were using the convent as a front for vile rituals. They've been here for centuries, hidden, feeding off the land, off anything pure. "And the two names, sister," Samuel pressed. "Brotherhood of the Silent Vow and Guardians of the Earth, are they the same?" "The Brotherhood is the inner circle, the true believers, the ritualists," Sister Agnes explained, her voice gaining strength. "The Guardians are the outer layer controlling the town, keeping secrets, all connected like roots of a poisoned tree." "We need to get out of here, sister," Samuel urged, glancing nervously back. "They know you're alive, and you spoke to me. They will hunt us relentlessly." "I know a way," Sister Agnes said, resolute. "An old trapper's trail, rarely used. It leads away from Oakhaven through the deeper woods to a small ferry crossing on the Roanoke River, several miles south. From there we can get to a larger town." Samuel nodded. It was a risky, desperate flight, but their only chance. With Sister Agnes, he had a guide, a witness, and a glimmer of hope. They had unveiled the horrific truth. Now they had to survive to expose it. The chase had begun in earnest, their lives and the truth of 52 vanished souls at stake. The arduous journey through the Virginian wilderness continued. Sister Agnes, frail yet remarkably knowledgeable, led Samuel through winding deer trails and across streams under the cloak of darkness. The faint metallic scent, though distant, was a constant reminder of the convent's horrors. Samuel's injuries ached, but adrenaline fueled him. Sister Agnes, exhausted, pressed on, driven by the desperate need for justice. She shared more details, whispers she'd heard, glimpses of cloaked figures, strange lights from the basement dismissed as miracles. "They were so careful," she whispered, regret in her voice. "They made us believe it was divine protection, but it was a monstrous deception." She revealed that Mother Superior Helena had grown troubled, questioning strange night deliveries of crates and constant basement repairs. "I think she was getting too close." Samuel understood. The Brotherhood had been preparing their sacred wellspring for years. The nuns, once a cover, became an obstacle. As dawn approached, they found a small, hidden cave for a brief, uneasy rest. Every rustle and distant bird call brought a jolt of fear. They knew the guardians were hunting them. Their fears materialized later that morning when Samuel heard the distant baying of hounds. "Dogs," he whispered to Sister Agnes. "They're tracking us." She paled. "They belong to the McCourty family. They're part of the Guardians." They pushed on, through brambles and over rocky outcrops, the baying growing closer. Samuel felt despair. They were exhausted and the odds were stacked against them. Suddenly, Sister Agnes pointed. "There, the old logging road. It leads to the river. We can pick up speed." They scrambled onto the firm path, running, breath ragged, the sounds of dogs and shouts closing in. As they rounded a bend, they saw it. A clearing, the wide Roanoke River beyond, and a dilapidated ferry at a small dock, its grizzled ferryman tending ropes. "The ferry!" Samuel shouted, a desperate surge of hope. But then, two cloaked figures emerged from the trees ahead, blocking their path. Their hoods were down, revealing grim faces. A burly McCourty and Mr. Blackwell, the general's store owner, both armed with rifles. "Thought you could escape, Agnes?" Blackwell sneered, his voice harsh. "And you, detective, meddling where you don't belong." Samuel instinctively pushed Sister Agnes behind him. "Let her go. She knows nothing," he yelled. "She knows too much," McCourty growled, raising his rifle. "And so do you. The wellspring's secrets are not for the profane. They are sacred." The hounds were deafeningly close. They were trapped. Just as McCourty aimed, a sharp crack echoed from the trees to their right, dry wood snapping. Blackwell and McCourty hesitated, glancing nervously. In that fleeting moment, Samuel saw his chance. He pointed wildly. "The sheriff, he's here." It was a desperate lie, but it worked. The two guardians shifted their focus. "Now, sister!" Samuel yelled, shoving Sister Agnes towards the riverbank. "Run!" He then lunged at McCourty, tackling him, trying to disarm him. McCourty was powerful, and they wrestled fiercely, Samuel's ribs screaming. Blackwell, instead of helping, turned his rifle towards Sister Agnes, who was scrambling for the ferry. The ferryman, with surprising speed, swung a heavy, coiled rope, catching Blackwell's legs and sending him sprawling. His rifle discharged harmlessly. "Get on, sister," the ferryman urged gruffly. "Quickly." Sister Agnes, with a final surge of strength, scrambled onto the small boat. Samuel, wrenching free from McCourty, sprinted and leaped onto the ferry. "Push off," Samuel yelled. The ferryman shoved the boat from the bank. McCourty and Blackwell stood on the shore, contorted with rage as the ferry pulled away. The hounds' baying grew deafening as Sheriff Brody and the rest of the hunting party burst into the clearing. "Stop them!" Brody roared, raising his pistol. But it was too late. The ferry was already in the current. Samuel looked back. The full force of the Guardians, including Sheriff Brody, watched their escape. The sheriff was undeniably part of the Brotherhood. The entire town was compromised. "Who are you?" Samuel gasped to the ferryman, relief washing over him. The old man, eyes fixed on the distant shore, grunted. "Just a man who knows a secret or two about this valley. And some secrets need to be told." Samuel looked at Sister Agnes, tears and dirt streaking her face, but hope in her eyes. They had escaped, but the fight was far from over. The truth was out. and they had to carry it to a world that might not believe them. The silent convent's secrets were about to echo beyond Oakhaven. The slow journey across the Roanoke River offered a sense of fragile freedom as Samuel and Sister Agnes watched the receding figures on the Oakhaven bank. Brodie, McCourty, Blackwell, and the cloaked men. The hounds baying faded, replaced by the gentle lapping of water. "They won't follow you across," the silent, weathered ferryman rasped. "Their power ends at the river's edge. This side, they're just men." He had helped them, he explained, because of the missing nuns and Sister Agnes's past visit. Some secrets need to be told. They disembarked onto a seldom-used road leading south. "There's a town, Waynesboro, about a day's ride," the ferryman offered, before poling back across the mist-shrouded river. Aching but buoyed by freedom, Samuel and Sister Agnes began their walk. She fully recounted her 5 years of fear and uncertainty. She described the gradual indoctrination of the other nuns, some believing they were part of a divine calling, a purification, before the final, horrifying ritual. The leader, Elias Thorne, a charismatic speaker, had infiltrated the convent's trust before revealing his terrifying purpose, orchestrating the disappearance with chilling precision. "They believe they're protecting the earth," Sister Agnes explained, "that humanity corrupted it, and only through these sacrifices can balance be restored. They see the energy beneath the convent as a living entity, and the sisters were a gift to it." Samuel listened, already forming his case. Elias Thorne, the McCourty family, Mr. Blackwell, Sheriff Brodie. He had names, connections, and most importantly, Sister Agnes, the undeniable witness. They reached Waynesboro late that evening, exhausted but resolute. It was a bustling town, a stark contrast to Oakhaven. Samuel immediately sought out the local authorities. The initial reception was skeptical, a wild story of a secret cult, an ancient wellspring, and 52 missing nuns, all from a traumatized woman, sounded like ramblings. But Samuel Blackwood was persistent. He laid out the facts. Oakhaven's inconsistent report, the metallic smell, the underground chamber, his injuries, the ambush. Sister Agnes, terrified but brave, corroborated his extraordinary tale. It took days of intense questioning and Samuel's undeniable reputation, but the Waynesboro authorities, intrigued by the sheer scale of the allegations and disturbing details, agreed to send state investigators to Oakhaven. Weeks turned into months. The Oakhaven investigation met fierce resistance. Sheriff Brodie and the prominent families denied involvement, painting Samuel and Sister Agnes as delusional instigators. But state investigators, armed with Samuel's knowledge, bypassed local obstruction. They found the hidden entrance to the underground chamber. The unmistakable metallic smell lingered. They found the 52 nuns' habits meticulously folded, a haunting testament. Forensic experts, despite the time elapsed, found residual evidence confirming Samuel's account of a macabre ritual. The discovery shattered Oakhaven's facade. The town plunged into chaos as the truth emerged. Elias Thorne, Sheriff Brodie, the McCourtys, Blackwell, and other key Brotherhood of the Silent Vow members were arrested. The scale of their deception, fanaticism, and the horrifying fate of the 52 sisters shocked the nation. The trials were long and sensational. Sister Agnes, emotionally scarred, testified with unwavering courage, condemning the guardian's depravity. The public was sickened by the wellspring ritual, where the sisters were forced into the pit to become part of the earth's energy. The silent convent was revealed as a tomb built upon monstrous belief. Samuel Blackwood, the quiet detective, achieved his greatest victory, but at a profound personal cost. The horrors he witnessed left an indelible mark. He brought justice, but the chilling echoes of their silence would forever resonate. St. Cecilia's convent, a grim monument to human cruelty, was eventually razed, its history too heavy to bear. The land was consecrated, a silent memorial to the 52 souls absorbed by a twisted ideology. Sister Agnes found refuge in a distant convent, her life forever altered by the truth she'd carried. She devoted her remaining years to prayer and reflection, finding solace in a faith untainted by the shadows she'd escaped. The case of the silent convent became a cautionary tale. Even in serene settings, the darkest corners of human belief could fester, hidden beneath normalcy, waiting for the truth to echo through the silence. Samuel Blackwood never forgot the metallic scent, the eerie quiet, or Sister Agnes's courageous whisper. He had brought the truth to light, facing a darkness that would forever haunt his mind. The silent convent no longer held its secrets, but its echoes would linger, a perpetual testament to the 52 vanished lives that finally found their voice. If you've been captivated by this story and want to explore more thrilling mysteries and suspenseful tales, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching. Remember, this is a fictional story.